Okay, so this is the closed session in advance of the regular public board meeting of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District. I'm Len Welch, the board president. This time I'll take roll call. Director Sheriff Watt. Here. Director Coombs.
Here.
Director Gillette is on her way. She'll be phoning in when we go into closed session. Vanessa Cordova, I believe, is not going to be here, wasn't planning on being here for the opening. We have a couple of items she can't participate in. First items in the closed session. After those are finished, she should be showing up for discussion of the other items. So at this time, would anybody like to comment before we go into closed session?
How about those Warriors? Oh, sorry.
You're fired. Okay, hearing none, I will close down this part of the meeting and we'll go into closed session. About to start, we're just waiting for Rochelle and Chuck to make it back. And can you hear me? Am I coming through? No? Got it. Okay. So good evening, everybody. Welcome to the May 12th regular public session of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District. My name is Len Welsh. I'm the board president. This time I'll take roll call. Director Sheriff Watt. Here. Director Toombs. Here. Director Cordova. Here. And Director Gillette. Here. We have a full house. I'm going to report out real quickly on the closed session we just finished. And I do want to apologize for starting late. It was a very packed closed session agenda, as the open session agenda is pretty packed too. So on the closed session, items A and B, no action was taken. On item C, we gave direction to council. And on item D, no action was taken. So let's see here. At this time, I guess I will open the meeting up to public comment. Yes.
Hi, I don't know if this is plugged in.
It should be, but you got to get close to it.
All right, good. I'm good at that. Let's see. Good evening, President Welsh and directors. This should just take me a couple of minutes. I timed it at home and I've written it out just in case. I have a few questions for Director Cordova based on the documents that appear beginning at page 41 of the board packet tonight. I hope that she will answer them in the interest of transparency and to be sure that the public is informed. The citizens of Kensington deserve straight answers to the serious questions raised by this document. The Contra Costa Times reported that Director Cordova said Kensington police came to her home claiming a 911 call had been made and that she denied making such a call. At page 55 of the board packet, there is what appears to be a transcript of a conversation which took place during a visit by a Kensington police officer to Director Cordova's home in response to a 911 call. So I'm asking, is this one of the incidents that was reported in the Contra Costa Times as an unsolicited 911 call?
I'm not obliged to answer you, Linda, but
I understand.
But I will. I had two 911 calls. One involved Officer Ramos. The other involved Officer Hull. I discussed one with Greg Harmon, who looked into it, and another I discussed directly, I believe, with Sergeant Hull. He explained to me that even if you don't have a landline, everyone has a landline, was sort of the philosophy. I didn't file a complaint at the time the call was made. I just was surprised to see someone, because I had a courtyard that opens with a gate, and I was folding clothes, and the living room, so I didn't make a complaint. The issue was only raised when other residents raised it, and I have been asked by investigators if I had this happen to me. I said yes. I also said I didn't file a complaint at the time. I was approached by Kevin Hart. I said in the emails, which I'm happy to provide, that it just startled me. I didn't find Officer Ramos to be rude, nor Officer Hall, or Sergeant Hall. I was just a more startling thing because I don't have a landline, and I still don't. But again, I was in a cul-de-sac on a hill with a courtyard. So how it was reported is really out of my control, but I've never made a complaint about those calls. And Greg Harmon was quite nice about it and sort of explained that sometimes you have a landline and you don't even know you have a landline. So that's the only explanation or information I can offer or will offer. But
So if I read that transcript correctly, then the officers
Excuse me,
didn't force
Len,
their way
I mean,
in?
we're not supposed to have a question and
well,
answer
you
session.
can
I'm sorry.
interrogate me. That's
I'm sorry.
fine.
Well, why don't we
Why don't I
can we
finish
hear
the
the
statement?
comment and then we'll move on, okay?
The director volunteered her response to the comment. I treat this as public comment.
Okay, can I
Excuse me.
suggest as a point of
Excuse
order
me.
here, as a point of order, please make your full comments. If Director Cordova wants to respond, she can.
I'm
Okay.
done with the response.
All right, so if I read the transcript right, it appears that Director Cordova believed that she accidentally set off the alarm, and this must be the other call then, and that is what caused the police to come by. And it also appears that at that time, per the transcript, that the officer, Officer Ramos, was invited into the home to look around and didn't force his way in. So if those facts are true, then we can assume that the report in the Contra Costa Times was incorrect. So
Linda, I'm going to
I'm
stop you now.
asking-
Excuse me.
Excuse me, I'm going to stop.
I'm
because
going to intervene for just a moment, please. It is not appropriate to do a question and answer, and these items are not listed on the agenda as an agenda item. So while you can make your public comment, it isn't appropriate for us to get into a full-blown discussion without the items being on the agenda.
I've
Yeah,
never
so we're
made-
not
I-
doing question and answer here. We're doing a comment, and then
Will
if...
you listen, can I
No,
finish,
let me
please?
finish, please,
I'd like to
okay?
finish this. I'm being
Finish your
interrogated.
comment, please, Linda, and then if you want to
All right.
respond, you can.
Okay. So I'm questioning then, and I feel it's incumbent on someone to comment about where the reporter, Mr. Peel, might have gotten his information that he used to make an incorrect report. Other questions raised by the document beginning on page 41 include statements concerning the registration of the car that was being driven at the time of the now infamous traffic stop. And I think it's appropriate for you to tell the public for how long the car's registration had been delinquent prior to that stop. There's also a statement about the lapse of the driver's license. I think it is equally appropriate for you to tell the public how long your driver's license had lapsed in the previous year. And finally, I am wondering why we still don't have that report. I hope that you would comment and state that you consent fully to the release of the report, as I understand that not even the board directors have seen the report yet. It's time to put an end to the controversy and bring the matter into the sunlight, and I think that the Kensington public deserves no less.
I agree, Linda, and that's why the Attorney General continues to actively investigate this case, because there's a lot unknown about this case. And hey, why not publish it and we can see what the investigators find out in terms of criminal offenses, if any, such as unlawful access to my personal records, such as information from other personnel that things might not be copacetic in that department. I was not stopped for a suspended license. I was not stopped for absent registration. I was stopped with an expired tag. I produced the relevant DMV document, and that is the end of the story. And that's all I'm going to state at this time. So you can malign me all you want. You can come up and call me any name or suggest that, malfeasance, misfeasance. I don't care, Linda. I know what happened. I know there's an investigation for the criminal component to this case. I am patient and I am hopeful.
I take it then you don't object to the release of the report?
That's
This
not
is-
what I
this is
said. I'm
beyond
done, Linda.
com-
I'm done.
All right, I thank you for the comment. Let's,
I did. Linda Lipstone, Highland Boulevard.
would anybody else like to comment
AKA what? Letter?
on any
So-
item not on the agenda?
Mr.
That's-
President, before we get too far on, if all possible, we have members of the Contra Costa County Public Works, as well as members of the PG&E, having a full agenda. I did not put them on the agenda item, make them a specific agenda item. If they can have 10 minutes to,
They can get up and comment, but right now
Okay.
Dr. Delk is there. Dr. Delk, you can
I was going to say that in the beginning before Ms. Limson.
let her
got-
comment, and if they want to come up afterwards, let them come up, okay?
A. Stevens Delk. Kensington's zero tolerance policy was never properly defined. It also was never even close to zero. During the first 4 years, only 50% of traffic stops resulted in citations. In the last 3 months, the rate has dropped to 20%. In addition, the average number of stops made each month has steadily declined from 170 the first year to 90 in 2014, plummeting to 30 in the last half of 2015, and then to 15 in the last 3 months. That's 15 per month. There have been 46 accidents since last June. That equals the per-year average before the UC study, and the projection for a full year is over 50% more than the average for the early years of the policy. In November, Mr. Hart introduced his proposal to rescind zero tolerance, saying that he, quote, believes it is extremely important to enforce traffic laws, but the policy is not being enforced pursuant to board direction. However, the board directed him not to change the policy before he presented his plan for consideration and approval. Yet since November, there has actually been further and significant decreases in the number of stops and also in the percentage of stops resulting in tickets. 50% tolerance has become 80% tolerance. That is, no citations issued in 4 out of 5 stops since January. My analysis indicates that the policy is not being enforced pursuant to board direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief, maybe next meeting in your manager's report, you could comment on this? Not now, but next meeting.
You bet. It'll
Thank
be actually a line item for next.
Yeah, I think she's raised some good issues. We should
Sure.
hear an explanation. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dill.
So I'd like to introduce Jason Shun. He is works for the Contra Costa County Public Works Department, and he's going to introduce some guests that we have from PG&E to talk about changing out the lighting in Kensington. Jason.
Thank you.
If I don't want to be rude or anything, but we actually have a packed agenda, so if you can please try to be brief, it would be helpful.
Yes,
And
I
if
will.
there's a way for people who want more information about what you have to say tonight, some phone number or whatever they could go to get more information would be good. Okay?
Sure.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for allowing me to present you to some information, some update about our streetlight program. My name is Jason Chen. I'm a senior civil engineer from County Public Works. Public Works administers the streetlight program throughout incorporated area of the county. In Kensington area, county pays PG&E to provide the streetlight services. The streetlights are owned and maintained by PG&E, and this is the typical setup as majority of the streetlights in the county are under this setup. PG&E has a voluntary program that will upgrade existing streetlight from high-pressure sodium vapor light fixture to LED. This is a program that has been implemented throughout the majority of the county already. For example, Alamo in Central County or Discovery Bay in East County. So we're working our way to the West County here. We have received positive feedback for this program. In Kensington, PG&E is proposing to continue the implementation of this program. Majority of the Kensington streetlights are on joint pole with the other utility, and the poles will not be changed. So we're really talking about the light fixture at the end of the arm. Even the arm will not be changed. The fixture height will remain the same height, and there are really a lot of many benefits to this program of changing into LED, such as lower carbon footprint, saving energy, etc. If you allow me, I would like to introduce Jeff from PG&E. He'll be able to tell you more benefit about this program and how PG&E plan to notify the resident and how they plan to switch out the light fixture. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's just for people following along. It's page 85 in the board agenda.
And also I have I'm not going to go through the whole presentation. I understand the time frame that you all are under. But there's copies of the presentation here. If you don't have it, there's information in there. And there's also a link to a website. So the website would give you lots of information about this program as well. So I'll short circuit the talk. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Does it go high enough for me?
Pull it up next.
There you go. How's that? Can you hear me now?
Right close like that. That was good.
Really close.
There you go.
Okay. All right. So what I wanted to do is just give you an overview of what we're talking about and what the implications are for the city. PG&E has requested, and the California Public Utilities Commission has approved us replacing high-pressure sodium lights, the kind of the yellowish lights that you have on the poles in town that they all kind of look on the same type. We call it a Cobra head arm. It's replacing just those light fixtures. It's not making any changes to the poles. It's not making any changes to the arms. It's just the light fixtures themselves. And with a real quick show and tell, these are what you have today. They're at the end of their useful life. Most of these are probably 30 to 40 years old. And these are, the bulbs on these, the fixtures have to be replaced about every 4 to 5 years. We have to put, no, we're not going to put plugs on all your poles. This is a demonstration model, but these are the fixtures that we'll be replacing them with. And I'll just talk about a couple of features of them real quickly. These are the LED lenses. Can everybody hear me okay? A little bit closer to the mic. I'll try it from here. So these LED lenses are designed very specifically to shine straight down onto the ground in a rectangular pattern so that they'll affect the sidewalk and the street, and they're intended to not go into your yard or into your home with the light. They also shield it on the top so that the light doesn't go up, so there'll be a reduction in light pollution in that sort of situation. And they're shielded around the sides to try to prevent the light from going out too far one way or the other into someone's yard or home. They're about 50 to 70% more efficient from an electricity perspective. They have an expected life of 20 years. They don't dim over time, but maybe 1% over that 20 years, whereas the high-pressure sodium lights dim quite a bit over time. And they have a full 10-year warranty, so what it will do is drive maintenance costs down.
Is there a place folks can go if they have more questions about this?
Yeah, there's the website, and through the, I can leave a stack of business cards here too if people have questions for me. I'm responsible for the outreach on the program. There's about 250 to 300 of these lights in Kensington. Actually, in the presentation is a map that shows where they are. So you can look at that. But it's all of the ones that fall into that category of light. We'll be putting in about the same lighting level that you have today, so it's not increasing the wattage or anything like that.
And the wavelength, roughly the same color light?
It'll be the same colors the other of the LEDs that you see on Arlington today. They're very similar to the lights that are on Arlington already. So if you drive home on Arlington this evening, you'll drive under lights that are very similar to the ones that we're going to put throughout the town. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a comment.
Sure.
So I was wedded to our old lights that were very charming and I think better fit our town. Mm-hmm. Now we're going to ones that look, in my opinion, just gross. Is there any aesthetic control that we have over what these lights look like? Because I'm already not happy. And I may be the only person, but I like the old ones.
And some people do. And
yeah,
in
like
fact,
Berkeley has really cool lights, for example.
Who does?
Berkeley.
Well, Berkeley has a lot of these LEDs, so
not up and down the Arlington.
So I'm not familiar with the specific. There,
Is there any aesthetic control over the design of those
Yeah,
lights?
so
Is there
the
another
only
choice?
variables that you have for choices are the wattages that you would choose, so brighter, or dimmer. That's really the variable that's there. They can be shielded if there's light-specific intrusion, but that shielding also affects the efficacy of the light as it hits the street and sidewalk, so it's not something that's done casually. So, yes?
What was the website? You said there was a website?
There is a website. It's pg.com, and the part of it that's specific to this is on the, I should have it memorized, but
Page 90 of the 90.
it's pg.com/streetlight upgrade.
And it won't be any brighter.
Same as what's on Arlington. Okay. So I'd be happy to do more, but I want to respect you guys have a busy evening, so.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
All right. Yes, sir?
I thought that I just saw that Berkeley had changed out their lights coming down the Spruce Street, and at the top of Spruce Street, by the reservoir, it looked like they had like a road light, which I thought was rather attractive.
I'm not familiar at all with what they may or may not have done there. This specific program is very specific to the Cobra Arm branch fixtures. So if we replace that with the same thing, we're only replacing the part that goes on the end. We're not replacing the whole arm. So it's not, what you're talking about I think might require a new pole and a whole new fixture. And that's a major investment for whoever happened to be paying for it. So. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Gail, did you have a comment? Oh, go ahead. Oh, could we get your name, please?
My name is Jeff Pollard.
And he's leaving cards too, right?
And I will leave some of these here as well as this presentation. And my cards are in the car, but I will bring them back in a moment.
Lynn and Kevin, can we get that information up on the website so people can access it by getting to us?
Sure.
His name and his information on the card and whatever paper he just left behind. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be back with my cards and I'll put that together.
Great. Thank you very much. Anybody else want to step up and comment? Okay, then let's move on. I'm going to, for the time being, skip over the, actually, board or staff comments. Board comments? Anybody?
I have a comment. A few weeks ago, the special districts in Contra Costa County convened in Concord to elect a new delegate to LAFCO, Mike McGill. After waiting 4 hours, we could not secure the requisite 23-member delegation. So we got up to 18. I think we got up to 20 at one point, and it fell back down. So we will be conducting that election by certified mail. And Mr. McGill continues to represent special districts on LAFCO until that time.
Thank you for that. Anybody else on the board?
I do. Park Buildings has announced their next 2 meetings. We will meet Tuesday, May 31st at 7 p.m. in the community center. Might be a full house with Boy Scouts and KMAC that evening, so you'll have to find us. We're kind of third on the list. And then we will meet hopefully again on Wednesday, June 22nd, also here. So 7 p.m.
Thank you. Actually, that reminds me, I should be we have a tentative meeting date for the Park Grounds Committee. Katie, was that the 24th we settled on, or the 19th? May 19th. We have to make sure we have a room, so we'll be confirming that shortly and getting an agenda meeting notice out. Staff comments?
So just real quick, of items of note that were on the general manager's report, it's 184.4 pounds of prescription drugs were recovered and taken to for a burn site. That's from Kissington residents, which is noteworthy. And then, of course, the text 911 is still is fully operational. And a couple items that were not on my general manager's report. I want to just real briefly talk about the sound system. that it's my understanding it has gotten a few comments on next door, so I'd like to briefly talk about that. I think I've mentioned it before. We're trying to develop a partnership with the other K groups. We got a total bid, lowest bid, responsible bidder, out of multiple bids was about $21,000, and if the board remembers, it's $6,000, but that $6,000 in the budget was only strictly for a sound system. But as we got into this and evaluated what the potential, what we need to do to try to eliminate an officer, because I only have 2 that are trained to do it, we added the video system. In addition to that, we also added in the for hearing disabled. So that's how it brought up to about $21,000. We still have a budget of 6. KIC, because I've gone to each one of them, KIC has voted to approve up to $5,000 to assist. KCC is authorized $3,000, and KPOA is still has some questions, so they have not allocated any funds yet, but they still have some questions to be answered. So I'd like to obviously procure this whole by the end of the fiscal year, but I may need to come back and ask for additional funds this fiscal year to offset the difference. Essentially, it is 4 speakers on this side. We changed the figure back to the board being on behind the or in front of the fireplace. 4 speakers on this side, 4 speakers on the other wall. A dome camera, so it's not impacted by any frisbee or tennis ball up in the rafters that would focus towards that way. Would also pick up staff. On this wall, there have been questions about what would we do relative to construction. I don't anticipate that to be a problem. The only thing I want to announce, because I understand it's gotten a lot of questions about in the next door, was the cost overall. So that's the current issue. I've tried to get it cheaper, so it'll boil down to, does the board wish to add more money to the budget relative to that? And then if they don't, then if it's strictly a sound system, then I may be able to do that, but I may have to go back to the K groups to ask, make sure they're okay with the not being the video system. So we're trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
So can I make a comment? Why can't we just have a Toyota version of a sound system instead of a Cadillac version? And why don't we just do a real assessment instead of taking it upon ourselves to make a huge investment that I'm not convinced we need at this point?
You're driving the Toyota right now. How does it feel? I'm being just kidding.
Kevin, how did we?
I can hear myself when I review videos. I can't hear you though, Chuck.
Let me ask Chief Hart. How did you arrive at the conclusion that we need this type of sound system?
Well, we've had no less than 6 separate contractors come out and give us bids anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 just for purposes of a sound system that will be recording, all right, that will allow people that are in the audience as well as the hearing impaired to also hear the board meeting. And I think it's critical that we have a system. This is the cheapest one. We have a system that works, all right, a multitude of opportunities for everyone in the community.
So we had a spec sheet they made their bids on?
No, we did the walk. Myself and Sergeant Huey did the walk and kind of talked about what is it that we need and what's the minimum, what's the maximum, that kind of stuff. The Cadillac is the $30,000 version. We don't need the Cadillac. I would say this is probably a Chevy. This will at least include microphones that are able to pick up where you don't have to speak so closely to them. This will include a plug-and-play box in the storage area where you just press play, and it'll include a camera that is mounted in the rafters there that won't have to be touched, won't have to be moved, and I don't have to have an officer, or in this case a sergeant, both of which are sergeants, to be standing here worried about and monitoring the sound system.
Okay, I think we should have this on the agenda for the next meeting, and in prep for that, if we could get some sort of written statement about what are the things we think this sound system needs to do, so that we have a written document to work with as we discuss this item next time around. Okay?
You bet.
Lynn, can I say one thing? I didn't
Sure.
get a chance. You blew by me during public
I'm
comments. I wanted to backtrack just a little bit. Talking about Vanessa and Linda's interchange, I was really kind of embarrassed because there's an investigation going on, and to come up here and lay into a director with any kind of allegation or vice versa. It's just unseemly. I really think that the best thing this community can do is let this investigation run its course, let it finish up, and then if and when the report's released, you can make your own judgments about it. But it's hard enough to sit up here and then to feel like you're on the spot, and it's kind of like being sandbagged. And I just think there's something fundamentally unfair about that. And that's the only comment I had.
I have one comment, and I wasn't going to say anything, but there's been some talk on Nextdoor about Buffington, who is Sergeant Barrow's attorney, getting a copy of the report, and if that wasn't proper. I did ask our lawyers about that, and they told us that because Sergeant Barrow was part of the investigation, he does get a copy of the report. So that rumor that's running around on Nextdoor that this was not something that should have been given to Barrow's attorney, or that he shouldn't have had a copy of, in fact, is required and allowed. So that's why they have it, and we don't. At least that's my understanding.
Thank you, Pat. I just want to say I hope we can get that report out there soon, because, you know, there were some very disturbing allegations made in that Buffington press release that's out there. There are charges preceding that equally disturbing out there, and the sooner we can get this cleared up, figure out what the truth is, I think that's going to make a lot of folks in the public feel better just to know what's going on.
Yes,
so I hope
and again, as Chief Hart has said numerous times, at least twice that I can find on video, there are two components to this stop. There's an administrative investigation that's been concluded, that is police reviewing police procedures, and there's also a criminal investigation that continues. And I think both need to be concluded before we start throwing accusations around like, you know, it's fodder.
I do think there's a lot of questions in the community about what happened, and I think you're seeing the frustration of the community in terms of wanting to know what happened and not understanding why they can't know now versus later. And so that type of comment is just as valid, in my opinion, as other people getting up and berating other people on the board for various things and making the same types of accusations and hurling the same kinds of statements. So, you know, I don't think it's necessarily good or bad. I just think that's part of being a director, at least now as we currently define it in Kensington.
No, we're sorry, we have to move on. We've had public comment. We are trying to take steps to be able to lawfully release as much of that report by the independent investigator from Richmond as we can. So that's one thing we're doing. If there's any way a district attorney or the FBI, both of whom I think are interested in this, if they're going to weigh in, I'm hoping that'll happen sooner rather than later.
I had understood that the report was not
Go ahead.
Just get close to it.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
The attorney for the officers has the report. He was given it.
He's entitled
It's
to
required. It's a part of the process.
The person against
that
whom
has
the
to happen.
accusation is made is entitled to get the report, and Buffington, as his attorney, can get it on his behalf. Is that right, Teresa?
That's correct.
Does that answer your question? Okay. At this point, can we get a quick report from the ad hoc committee on our progress?
Dave Spath, Chair of the Ad Hoc Committee. 2 quick points. All the residents in Kensington should have gotten their postcard to fill out their survey. If you haven't, I've put a series of postcards or a stack of them on a chair back there. You can pick it up and you'll find the web address, and if you type it in correctly, you will get to the survey. If you don't type it in correctly, you can go to the web page of the district, where there's a direct link from the district web page to the survey. You can also go on Nextdoor and you'll find where I've left the link as well. And if Worst comes to worst, you can send me an email, and I'll send you the link as well, because I've done that for 2 or 3 other individuals who will go nameless. Anyways, so I hope that you'll all fill it out.
The initials are Dr. Schwartz.
No, we worked it out very well. Anyways, so please, if you haven't filled it out, I'd appreciate it if you would. It doesn't take more than about 5 minutes to do, if not even that. Second, we're going to have a public forum on June 4th here in this building, starting at 10 o'clock in the morning. It will be the first opportunity for the subcommittees, of which there are 3, one looking at bifurcation of the GM, Chief of Police position, the second one looking at the possibility of contracting out police services to other agencies, and the third looking at the issues of consolidating the 2 districts, the fire district and the police district. So we'll have preliminary findings from all of those 3 committees, and these are findings that are just preliminary. We want to get input from the public as a result of those presentations, and then the subcommittees are going to have individual meetings subsequent to the forum, inviting anyone who wants to attend to ask further questions about the preliminary findings that have been made. There'll be plenty of time for at the forum. We have this room for 3 hours. We plan to have presentations of about 20 minutes, followed by questions and interaction, and then subcommittee members will stay around, or committee members will stay around if anyone wants to ask individual questions subsequent to the forum. So those are the 2 items that I want to report on, and if you have any questions, go ahead and have any.
So what's your ETA on coming out with the final findings?
Well, as I think I mentioned at the last meeting, and probably the previous one to that, we are targeting the end of August for still. I'm on the bifurcation subcommittee, and I can say, and I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I can say that we're in pretty good shape to meet that that deadline. So I'm hoping we will be able to do it.
I was giving you an out date, just, you know.
I know, and we'll take it if necessary, but right now, we'd like to get it done sooner than later, and we would continue to like to get public participation in the process. I should mention that we were criticized with regard to the survey. I think the survey does have merit. There's been some suggestions that it really has no validity per se, but I think it will be useful for both the board and for the public at large. So. Oh, well, yeah, there we will be asking the board, or certainly we will bring it to Chief Hart about the possibility of having an editor assist us in putting the final report together, because we're going to have 3 different subcommittees trying to meld a document together along with other matters associated with the format, and so it would probably benefit us to have an editor, and we don't anticipate an expensive activity. Correct, Gail?
Just a Toyota editor?
I'm sorry?
A Toyota editor?
Well, no, I don't know. I'm not trying to sell a high price or a low price editor. I mean, just
a Toyota Corolla editor.
Well, we'll see. But we will put together a scope of work and hopefully have it a reasonable one. I mean, we don't want someone to be writing the report for us because they don't have the information per se. We want someone to edit the report so it'll look presentable when we publish it. So.
For people who aren't here on the 4th, will there be some way to get the information that's conveyed at that meeting?
Well, everything being equal, we will record both audio and video as we did the last one, and it'll go up on the webpage. So if they want to go and view it there. I will also have all the material posted on our webpage as I did the last time, and so they can access it that way. And certainly I'm available at any time through the email address that has been established for the subcommittee. And you can query me, and I can get anyone in touch with any of the subcommittee leads for communication if they have any questions. So, or I'm more than happy to answer questions as well through that email address. I would prefer not to do it on Nextdoor, however, only because it seems to migrate into something else beyond just a regional discussion of the issues. So that's my own personal feeling about that. So.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You all may have noticed I kind of skipped over the consent calendar, and I want to sort of get to items I'm hoping we get to tonight. I don't know if we're going to be able to go beyond 10 or not, but there's some things we absolutely have to get done tonight. So quickly, I hope, first item, the presentation of new business, presentation from the independent auditor, Craig Fechter, is up. Is Mr. Fechter here?
He is, Mr. President.
Thanks for having me back, Board. Again, this is the audit presentation for the 2015
Get a little bit
fiscal
closer.
year.
You got to get real intimate with that mic.
Okay, this is the audit presentation for the 2015 fiscal year. There were some major changes to this year's financial statements, just due to the fact there was a new accounting standard passed about 3 years ago, Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement 68. Now, what I've been doing, I'm not sure if I even mentioned this to Kevin and Lynn, but I've been actually attending Finance Committee meetings to have a more in-depth conversation about GASB 68 specifically. So, I mean, I've been spending upwards of, again, 30 to 45 minutes of board meetings explaining like what the standard is, what the pension liability is, some of the factors that went into its creation and whatnot. So if you guys are interested in that, I can certainly come back at the following Finance Committee meeting and spend more time. Again, I don't think I'll be able to spend 30 minutes tonight on GASB 68. But, so if that's something the board has interest in, I'm more than happy to come back to present specifically on that. So again, I'll just briefly go over the financials, show you the major change, discuss and brief some of the procedures we performed, and then open the field for questions. So again, we are not part of the district. We are an independent accounting firm that was retained by the district, so you have figures as of the prior fiscal year end. Again, Government Code Section 26909 requires independent review of your books and numbers to make sure the public has access to figures that have been reviewed by someone else that's not part of the district. So this is that audit. So
Excuse me, is everybody hearing okay?
it's actually quite difficult when I'm making out with the microphone practically. I'm very sorry. I'm actually usually engaging. I was a professor for UC Davis for a number of years, and I'm usually pretty engaging and whatnot. So I apologize if I'm kind of constrained.
Well, we can.
Okay. Yeah, it's actually quite difficult. If you want to come try it, you're more than welcome.
Well, I'm willing
Yeah.
to assume that you're doing your best. I was really asking about volume. Can people hear what he's saying? And if the answer is yes, let's move on.
Extra copy of this if you want to look at it right now. It's the report. I have my.
I thought you were doing fine.
Okay. So, again, the report has some very distinct sections in it. The first part of the report, the first 2 pages, are our actual audit report itself. The audit report says that we believe the attached financial statements are free of material misstatement. Those are on pages 1 and 2 that you'll find. Again, we don't just take your internal numbers and accept them as gospel. We have to perform a variety of procedures to verify accuracy. We do confirmations with third parties. So we, for example, will contact the county just to make sure the numbers that were provided by the district were accurate and that the cash that they say you have is what the county actually agrees that you have. We contact, for example, the bank that holds the note with the district, verify the payments were made. Again, one of your largest expenses on the year are your payments to your retirement plan. We contact PERS independently and then match up the payments per your internal books to the outside parties. So again, our procedures are a variety of different things that we do, and we contact outside parties as much as possible to to verify that the numbers that you guys say that the activity that occurred during the year was what actually happened during the year. So, again, we don't just take the internal numbers and accept them and move on. We perform a variety of procedures to verify accuracy. So, again, that's what pages 1 and 2 say. So, pages 3 through 7 is our management discussion and analysis. This is primarily a district-prepared document. We work with them to get the numbers correct, but it is the responsibility of the district. There are a number of things that you can put in here. We actually don't express an opinion on this part of the report. We disclaim, so you can basically say whatever you want as long as it's not wildly inaccurate or untrue. I have some districts that will actually give narratives about major events that occurred during the year that are not financial in nature. So that's that part of the report. Now, of the entire report itself, the most important pages you're going to find are on pages 8 through 10. And that's our, again, we have these really big long names in governmental accounting. And so we have the statement of net position. I would just call it the balance sheet on page 8. On pages 9 and 10, I would just call that the income statement. So again, the balance sheet gives a picture of your financial position as of a specific date and time. Your profit and loss statement or income statement shows the actual activity during a period of time. And so again, what you'll see on page 8, again, you have your assets up top, your liabilities down next, and the difference there is our retained earnings, fund balances, net assets. There's a variety of different names.
Quick question for you.
Of course.
Do you mind if I jump in?
Sure.
It's been puzzling me like crazy here. There's a deferred outflow of resources for $381,774 and a deferred inflow of resources. And I think the deferred outflow is what we paid to CalPERS for our pension plan.
That's correct.
So, hot dog.
For the yeah.
I feel
You're the
so
first one
honored.
that's ever guessed that.
Well, I actually went back and looked at the balance at the income statement and saw the number. That's why.
I'm very impressed.
Well, my day job, I'm a tax lawyer.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That explains everything.
Yeah. Okay.
The deferred inflows, though, I could not take back to any other number on the expense report, and I couldn't figure out if it was. I mean, these are all payments that are going to be made after the close of the year. That's the whole point of it.
Correct.
But I could not figure out what the deferred inflow of resources was meant to capture.
Okay, so let me just discuss this overall, and I'll tie in your question to this. So you'll see just above the deferred inflows of resources is our net pension liability of $2.559 million as of June 30, 2015. So when GASB, or the Governmental Accounting Standard Board, released the statement, they realized that it was an administrative impossibility for PERS to get, well, for any defined benefit pension plan to get accurate figures out within that short of a time. And so due to that fact, they allowed you to present as of the end of the prior fiscal year the pension numbers. So the pension numbers here are as of June 30, 2014, not as of June 30, 2015. And so what the accounting requires is they require you to capitalize the current year contributions as a deferred outflow of resource. I would call it a prepaid expense, is more or less what it is. Now, the deferred inflows of resources, and so basically if there's this ties back to your contributions on an annual basis, or why the contribution rate's going to change one year to the next. There's all sorts of different factors that go on what to make up, what your contribution rates are. So if the assets in the plan, if they dramatically increase one year to the next, they don't want you to just stop making contributions because the assets of the plan went up by 20% in 1 year. Conversely, if there's a year like 2008, 2009 where the stock market drops by 45%, they don't want to hike your contribution rates up by 50% the following year. So the actuaries accept there's some volatility in the assets that are held by the plan. And so because of this, they smooth out gains and losses over a 5 to 7 year period. And so the measurement period this year that was there was a 20% gain or 20% increase that CalPERS had on its assets. And so for financial reporting purposes, you're basically capitalizing that gain. You're not showing the pension assets increase by that much because you're assuming you're going to smooth that out over the next 5 years. Now that number, so the deferred outflows of resources is going to be pretty consistent 1 year to the next because you're always going to be capitalizing your PERS contributions, 1 year in arrears. The deferred inflows of resources could be a deferred outflow at some point if, like, the market doesn't do well and that those prior gains end up wiping themselves out. And so it's kind of a complicated calculation, but that's a number that we get from the actuary from PERS that shows this is how much more the plan made than we're recognizing for financial reporting purposes, because we recognize inherently the market is unstable and potentially volatile, and we don't want to dramatically impact the contribution rates. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Yes, sir.
Sorry, Brian Anderson. So just to summarize, the inflow is there because the stock market went up.
For that particular year, correct. Yes. But keep in mind, this is like 2 years in arrear at this point. And so the stock market for the past 2 years has done nothing, or I think lost a couple %, which means that, as we move along the next 2 years, we're going to have this number reversed out. That's a good question. Again, I'm very impressed that you caught that. But okay.
You get a gold star.
I caught it too,
get a
I
gold-
just didn't tell you.
Yeah, I'll give you a. Oh, okay. Well.
My LLM came from
Okay. Now, as far as the rationale behind why that is there, I mean, I can have a conversation lasting a couple all night, well, hours, as far as why there's a net pension liability. Basically, when you make contributions or you make promises to your employees about what their pensions are going to be, when it comes to like a defined contribution plan or like a 401k plan, I'm sure that we all, many different people have them, that type of plan. Your contribution is what it is for 1 year, and that's it. The employer no longer has an obligation to the employee. The employer says, I'm going to match 3% of your W-2 wage, and that's that. I'm done. Whether the plan performs well or doesn't do well, the employer's obligation is capped off when they make the contribution. In a defined benefit plan, you're basically promising your employees a specified benefit that no matter what happens, they're going to get X number of dollars per month once they retire if they meet the criteria to be part of the plan. So, again, if you hire an officer at age 25 and you have to prepare calculations assuming this officer is going to retire at some point and be eligible for PERS retirement. And so what the actuaries do is come in and say, in order to fully fund this officer's retirement, and again, they make a lot of different assumptions. They make how much, the assumptions like how much the assets are going to make in the plan, what the mortality rates are, how much the inflation rate is. There's all sorts of these assumptions that go into the plan, but they use those assumptions to tell you what the contribution rate's going to be. And so if any of those assumptions aren't met, at that point you have either an overfunded plan or you have an underfunded plan. And so what CalPERS has done in the past 15 years is they've assumed a rate of return on assets. Back in 2001, the assumed rate of return on assets was 8.5%. That steadily dropped over the years to we're at the current 7.5%. Now, if you look at actual market performance just in the Dow Jones Industrial from 2001 through today, the market has averaged literally just over 3%. We've been through a couple different recessions. The market still isn't up to par according to what CalPERS has projected. In my opinion, that's probably the most pressing reason why this net pension liability exists, is because the actuarial assumptions used to develop your contribution rates have used assumed rates of return higher than what's actually been made. And because of that, there's a net pension liability that's there. And the number itself is not new. It's been there for quite, for I'd say 7 or 8 years now, ever since the market crashed in 2008. It's just a reporting mechanism that GASB put into place with GASB 68. And so, in my opinion, at least since we've audited the district, we've never felt the district has missed any contributions to PERS. Again, we do independent confirmation every year. We make the district log into PERS, give us their contributions, and then we match those up. So we don't ever feel the district miss any payments. And pragmatically, I think if they did, CalPERS would come asking questions why. Again, this is more of a function of the return on plan assets has been less than what the actuaries have assumed, and because of that, this pension liability exists, in my opinion. Any questions on that? I mean, there could be a multitude of questions, but okay. If the board has interest, again, I'm willing to come back to a finance committee meeting and maybe give, like, it's been averaging 30 to 45 minutes. So So if you'd like me to come back and talk more, I'm more than happy to do so.
Thanks for that. Could you just sort of give us a bottom line here? What's the overall conclusion you have?
So we
having conducted the
so we
audit?
believe the financial statements here that are attached are free material misstatements. Again, we conducted specific procedures to verify accuracy of the numbers, confirmation, testing, so on and so forth. The district had positive income this year for the first time in a few years now. That's a positive point. It was $132,000 increase on the year. We had no specific findings to present to management or to the board of things that we felt should change as far as your internal control structure either.
That's what I wanted to hear. It's like basically we're passing the test. Is that
Well,
fair?
I mean, it's it goes into the question of what an audit is. Like we can't look at every transaction. We can't evaluate every interaction between staff and the board and employees. And so whether weaknesses exist that we don't know about, there's certainly that possibility. We can't assume that level of responsibility in the audit. It's just not part of what we do. So
I had one real silly question. Vanessa,
Sure.
I'm sorry. Do you want to? On page 17, I just had a question about a number that I think may or may not be right. Total government funds you have listed at $1,579,974. And if you add that column up, it comes out to a different number. But the next page, you have total government funds where you have capital. You have some number there that's 1,582,897. Am I missing something about why there's a difference between the two?
no, I believe. Well, so if you add up the 1,579,974
And
the 2,923.
you get up, I got 1,872,684.
So if you add up on page 17, if you add up 2,923 plus
Oh, that's what I missed.
1,579,974
Sorry.
plus 2,92710, that should be the 1,875,607.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Thanks.
That's okay.
Any final questions for Mr. Fector? Go ahead.
Started out by talking about the gas situation
Mhm.
and the recognition that requires
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
Is there any likelihood that future years are going to require recognition of some kind of liability?
I mean, it's already there. That's a great question. So GASB 45 came out several years ago that required to make, basically you had an annual required contribution for your overall liability for other post-employment benefits. We call it OPEB liability. Yes, there is currently an initiative in place where they're going to have the same type of thing there for OPEB. And that's not going to come down for 2 or 3 more years. But yes, that is in the pipeline right now. Good question.
Anything else? Okay. Oh, go ahead, Linda.
Yes, there are. I actually did the math. The total liability in the fund is $11,600,000. The unfunded component is $2.557 million. So the total assets in the fund are just over $9 million. You're welcome.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin.
Mr. President, I need a vote to accept the report, the audit report.
Do I have such a motion?
I move we vote to accept the audit report.
I'll second it. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. So I would like to go to item C here. Again, want to make sure we cover the items of business that are absolutely essential for tonight. Item C is consideration of approval of a contract extension for interim general manager, chief of police Kevin Hart, with no proposed change in monthly compensation, benefits, or other terms and conditions of employment, other than the term of the contract, which will be determined by the board in its consideration of this item. So I actually, I'll just start out by saying I think that we should extend the chief's contract. I think we should choose a term of 9 months. This will take us through the end of February. By then, we will have heard from the ad hoc committee on possibilities for change. At the same time, if we decide we want to go to a different model than the one we currently have of the combined positions, that new board will have time to work on that change. Or if the board wants to find someone else, there'll be time to actually go through that process and select the best candidate. So my feeling is that we should move forward. There's been some talk about switching horses in midstream here. I think that would be a huge mistake at this time. So those are my feelings on it.
So are we taking board comments first before public comment?
I think we are.
Okay. So I just want to say that Rochelle and I were appointed as a subcommittee to look at what Kevin Hart wanted in terms of a contract, and also what other options we might have. I think we had a very nice experience working together. We did consider some other options, and I too am going to support the extension of Mr. Hart's contract through February for the same reasons that Lynn has articulated. When I look at it, I feel like we need stability in the department. I think that we need to have, I think that Kevin's done a good job. I think that, like all of us who do our jobs in the beginning, there have been some slips and falls, but I think overall he has been good for getting the district back on track with a professionalism that he's brought to the department and the way he operates. There can be some criticisms of that may or may not be valid, but I think he's tried, and I think he's done a good job at that. Since the ad hoc committee, and it's one of the reasons, Dave, I wanted to confirm that you guys will be done in August, hopefully. I believe that either this board or the next board will be making a decision about what the district should look like going forward. The new board will take office in December, and I think by extending the contract through February, there'll be sufficient amount of time for the new board to decide what kind of structure it's going to have if that hasn't been decided, and if the structure remains the same, to decide if they want to keep Kevin Hart, if the structure remains different, to decide how they want to handle who's going to be in whatever position. So to address the uncertainty, I think we need stability. And that's why I will vote in favor of extending his contract through the end of February. He is an at-will employee, which means that if at any point in time we decide that he's not doing his job correctly, we can terminate his employment. We can also extend his employment beyond February if we decide we want to do that. This is just a termed contract with certain provisions in it. And the fact that he accepted the contract, which was very important from my perspective, and I think I don't want to speak for Rochelle, but I think we were in agreement on that. He accepted the contract without any additional compensation, without any changes to what he's already got. To me, that was a good faith showing on his part, and I think we should continue his contract for that period of time.
Go ahead.
Pat and I did have a good time working together, as we did previously, I have to say. But I don't think we want to make this too regular. But I will not be voting for the extension of Chief Hart's contract tonight. Unfortunately, I think we are asking anyone to do a very difficult job, but we have not had the cultural change and emphasis on community policing that I had hoped for initially. And I have not found that we have achieved the balance I had hoped for between the needs of the police department and the needs of our community services.
I just would like to make one comment. That I think it's fine for the board to make its comments, but it needs to keep an open mind until public comment has been finished. And then if there's any change, perhaps it would be appropriate to make those changes. So I just wanted to clarify.
Do you want to, maybe we should just hear the public first, and then we can come back to the board?
That's within your discretion, but we just need to make sure that presenting an initial take where you are at the moment, I think is fine, but mine shouldn't be made up until the public has had an opportunity to weigh in.
All right, well, why don't we, if it's okay with the board. All right, well, Chuck, did you want to say something?
What's your inclination?
Yes, your inclination, well put.
Oh, sorry. I'm in favor of extending his contract. I actually wanted to do it for a year, but that's my initial inclination.
Vanessa? Okay, on to the public. Carl.
Good evening. I'm Carl Kruger. We have put a budget together, a preliminary budget together. We have a contract for our officers. But if we don't have a manager, we don't really have anything. And I am in favor of extending the contract to the chief. And many of the reasons that Pat just gave, I agree with. I think that we have had better management for the last year plus than we have had in a number of years. We have a person now who understands to look into the future, who understands a number of management issues that we may not have had in the past. So I am strongly endorsing to give the chief an extension. The thing that I like to do, I like to be consistent. And if you remember what I said at the MOU, that I think 14 holidays are too many. And for people who worked for the government, that may not be too much. But for people who spent their life in private industry, they know that 14 holidays are too many. So what I'm asking you, whoever is going to deal with the chief after this vote, I'm asking you to ask the chief to voluntarily give back 4 holidays. Now, my recommendation would be that he give up on Lincoln, Columbus, the floating holiday, and Admission Day. They seem to be I hate to say Lincoln because I think he was a great president, but he ought to give up 4 holidays. Now, I was thinking about how to handle this, because you clearly have some kind of a contract already written. But whoever deals with the chief after this vote, I'm asking that you ask him seriously to give up 4 holidays, because that is also our message to the officers. I hope in the next contract we go to 10 holidays. It doesn't cost much for the officers, but for the district, it's probably between $14,000 to $18,000 a year. So then, after you have asked the officers, I'm asking that the people who do this report next month what the chief said. I'm not making it a condition of the contract, but I think that the chief ought to seriously consider giving back the 4 holidays. Thank you.
Leonard Schwartzberg, can you hear me?
That's good.
No?
Right like that.
2 general comments first. I filed a complaint about the performance of Interim Chief Hart and 2 of the officers. I was told that the proper form to use was pursuant to the policy manual, section 1030.40. It's totally inadequate. It really is off target. So I just want to say that I think that whoever is dealing with the policies and procedures manual needs to check that and redo it because it's really inadequate. The second thing is I forgot the second general point. Maybe I'll come back to it. I know that people don't think I get anxious, but I do. There was an incident that was the most recent in a long chain of incidents of illegal entries into my home, and nothing was ever taken, but there were clear messages left that there had been intrusions. I experienced that as an attempt to intimidate me because I am very outspoken. And most recently, there was another in December, there was another entry, and some sabotage was done to a timer that controls the lights on the outside of my house at night. I called Chief Hart. It was clear that it was sabotage, and nothing again was taken. but it was a clear message to me that they could get into my garage, which, at any rate. And they used to get into my house too, but I've taken measures. So I called Chief Hart and asked for an officer to come out and look at it. I had not reported these things before because I didn't want to be labeled paranoid or something like that, because there is a tendency in this community to engage in character assassination of critics. And I did not want to put myself in that position. This was the first. I had reported it in the past to the FBI and to the DA. And this was the first time I reported it to the Kensington Police Department, because I reported it to Chief Hart. We had a new administration. He told me that the only two officers who could come out and do it were either Barrow or Ramos. And I had told him earlier, on the basis of Barrow's glaring at me a number of times, very much like Vanessa described, and then his recent adventures in Reno and what happened with Vanessa, and I did not trust his judgment. And I was fearful of him, and I asked Chief Hart to keep him away from me. And then Chief Hart, the first time I ever report to one of the crimes to the Kensington Police Department, he sends out Barrow and Ramos, and he tells me I'd have to wait another 2 days to get someone else. So Ramos came out and dismantled the evidence of the crime. I have it on videotape, his dismantling. I have it. It's clear. It's clear that what happened had to have been done deliberately. The first thing that was done, that I asked them to come and check on, was done deliberately. There's no way it could have happened otherwise. And it was destroyed. So I have filed a complaint, and Chief Hart responded in a manner that was that distorted the facts that I had told him. So the report, to put it gently, was extremely inaccurate. His response was extremely inaccurate. So I feel that the chief has contributed, is enabling an ongoing mentality. There was some talk about the culture, which hasn't changed, that certain officers seem to feel that they are above the law. And that's just not okay for the community I live in. I remembered the other thing, but I forgot again. Anyway, I'm very, very, very concerned. I do not believe that Chief Hart, I remember, an interim person who comes in is supposed to come in to fix a situation. And if they have as their goal getting the job permanently, that limits their ability to fix the situation. That's inappropriate for an interim person to come in and from the beginning being campaigning to get the job permanently. That means there are certain limitations on their capacity to do what needs to be done that's difficult. Thank you.
Anybody else?
John Gaccioni. An observation, isn't it interesting, nobody's mentioned a general manager. It's always a reference to the chief. I don't know. Okay. help me understand something I'm struggling with, and that's what price are you willing to pay for stability? When Mr. Hart came on board a year ago as interim general manager, chief of police, it was hoped our community would move forward, putting our police department's past escapades and transgressions behind us. The selection committee reassured us that Mr. Hart had been vetted and was the best candidate to fill the dual role of interim GM and COP. This, despite the fact that he had no prior experience as a general manager or chief of police. Nonetheless, he was hired. Take a look at where we stand today. As a new extension of Mr. Hart's contract for interim GM COP is being considered, Mr. Hart continues to hold his position as a member of the Dublin City Council, splitting his time between his duties in Dublin and his responsibilities in Kensington. In his dual position here, Mr. Hart is essentially supervising himself, and it is not working out. Wearing two hats as a general manager and chief of police has not worked out very well for Kensington either. It has become painfully obvious Mr. Hart views himself as chief first and general manager as a very distant second. There have been and continues to be a lack of understanding by Mr. Hart of the concept of transparency in governance. Mr. Hart has requested and received additional benefits over and above his original benefit-rich contract for his interim position. He's requested and obtained a new police car. He's in the process of shopping for a license plate reader system and body cameras. Apparently, it was a unilateral decision by Mr. Hart without seeking community input or discussion, and with no board vote either. Meanwhile, the citizens of Kensington are left to worry about the impact of these future expenditures will have on the department's budget because the general manager appears to be missing in action. More problematic has been his management, or rather mismanagement, of the Cordova-Berkeley stop fiasco. At first, Mr. Hart has been dismissive of the seriousness of the incident, and then let himself become part of the problem instead of working toward a solution. His lack of professional behavior as a general manager was also quite evident. And as a chief of police, he seems to have ceded control of the officers involved over to the POA, in my view. By not disavowing Mr. Justin Buffington's cockamamie press release, he lost all credibility as a law enforcement professional. As a result of Mr. Hart's mismanagement and the actions of a few members of the Kensington Police Department, the district could yet face serious, expensive legal consequences. And sad to say, public trust in our police department has not been restored by Mr. Hart's actions. To quote the inimitable Yogi Berra, it's deja vu all over again. Surely, with all the considerable experience and legal skills assembled on this board, a path toward a solution could be found. Director Gillette, an employment attorney, if you were to advise a private client who was in a similar situation, what advice would you give? How would you protect the district from legal exposure, possibly from the interim GM COP, as a result of this pattern of mismanagement. In conclusion, I strongly suggest that you do not vote to approve the extension of Mr. Hart's contract and begin looking for a more qualified candidate to fill the interim position. Again, I repeat, what price are you willing to pay for stability? Thank you.
Good evening, Ryan Anderson. I've got a couple of questions. The first one is around expectations, and thank you for your statements earlier on. Specific to extending this temporary and interim position and some concerns that the temporary role may be evolving into a permanent one, will the board commit to openly recruit for the position of Chief of Police in February 2017 when the role comes to an end? When the temporary interim role comes to an end?
Some board members may not be here. It's going to be a different board, most likely.
For the ones that are here and will remain,
I'm not going to commit to that, no.
I will commit.
Yes.
Absolutely. Sure. Yes.
Yes.
I will, and it's
You won't take a position on...
No, I won't. I will evaluate the situation and make the decision I think is best for the community. I wouldn't do anything else. And I have no idea what, the situation will be at that time, so I'm not going to predict that.
Would you be open to an open recruitment at that point in time at the end of the temporary position?
I will be open to doing what I think is absolutely best for this community, not, who I like, not who I dislike, but what I think is the best choice for this community in terms of the skill set we need and have available to us.
Speaking in hypotheticals is probably not great. I mean, I understand that you'd like to get a commitment, but I think he's answered your question.
Yeah, no, I think, and thank you for doing that. Yeah, so there was a temporary term, speaking to terms before, now there's conversation tonight about extending that term into 2017 for another 9 months, and that's a big move. I think it's reasonable that some people in the community feel this may be a drift towards a permanent position. So I think it's fair to ask if there are any intents at this point in time to make this a permanent position or remain open to ending the temporary and interim piece.
So it sounds, and I've thought about this, the way this initial recruitment process was presented to the public was that there was a contract with a buffer of a 3-month extension that we could execute. And as I recall, in my memory, could be failing me, but as I recall, we were to have another open recruitment if in fact we were to extend beyond the extension.
That was my memory as well.
Okay, so that's the source of your question. Are we drifting toward just sort of
de facto permanent position?
That's right, and I hope not.
Continuing to extend.
I hope not.
Through inertia.
Yeah, I hope not, because I think public recruitment, a robust, broad public recruitment, particularly for a job that has a very novel combination of top-down skills and more consensus-building skills, we need to cast a very wide net to find the best candidate, and you can't do that by just by not
Thank
doing
you.
it.
No, and I agree, and I think we're going to be a wiser community after the committee's report as well. So having that flexibility, I think, will be positive for us to reassess where we are.
Right.
My second, thank you for answering my question.
My question assumes that we're going to keep the same structure.
Exactly.
That's why I think it's a difficult question to answer for anyone, whether you're going to be on the board or not, because you don't know that we're going to maintain the same structure. We don't know what the structure is going to be once the ad hoc committee reports. We don't know what the new board is going to look like. We don't know what kinds of decisions they're going to make. So that's why, while I understand your need to ask the question, I think that it is basically meaningless at this point in time unless we keep the same structure.
Well, I think a question of intent to maintain flexibility and be open to terminating a temporary and interim arrangement? I don't think that's a meaningless question.
That's a different question.
But your point raises, takes me to my
track
second.
of questions.
My second question is around flexibility. There's a 6-month period from the committee reporting in August to February of 2017, which presumably there's going to be some impactful statements around a bifurcated or non-bifurcated role and possibly outsourcing the services. Is there a challenge around flexibility and being flexible by having such a long window from August through to February, half a year between the committee reporting? Does it limit our flexibility in terms of what the expectations are? For example, if the position is split out, the terms, compensation, and the expectations may be very different if we've set an expectation.
Ryan, it's an at-will agreement. It's that simple. We can fire the chief for any reason or no reason. Okay. That's what employment at will means.
So what you're saying is in September, if we choose to come to a mutual agreement to terminate that agreement and have another one in a different role, you see no issues with being able.
I don't. It's an at-will agreement.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
It gives us the most flexibility, in my opinion, you can have.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mabry Benson here. He just brought up a point, and I wondered if it is legally required that a permanent be advertised in a full advertised manner rather than merely extending the old, we'll say renewing what we've got right now. I think some of us would like to hear a legal opinion about the requirement for a fully advertised permanent positions, whatever it ends up to be. But what I really wanted to say is, in regard to renewing this contract, I'm very disappointed that the board has not been exercising very much oversight over Mr. Hart as he's been acting. And first of all, I'm going to thank John for stealing my thunder in that the board and Mr. Hart have been totally emphasizing the chief of police part of the job and basically neglecting the general manager part. I think the board should have been asking for more general manager type product from him, a general manager who has fiscal interest of the district, particularly over those of a chief of police who would love to have as many new high-tech goodies as somebody will foot the bill for. I also ask, when has the board asked for any updates on Mr. Hart's 100-day plan? I even asked that a few months ago. Well, that's just fallen down into the wastebasket too. Has the board asked Mr. Hart why he went to a conference where he was supposed to be asking for board approval, but that never seemed to have occurred? And why is the board considering a renewal of the contract? My notes were 1 year, but now you're talking about 9 months, which is certainly better than 1 year. And I'm glad to see that at-will part of it. Renewal, when Mr. Hart is under investigation regarding issues concerning the traffic stop. That does not seem appropriate. Also,
excuse me, I have to stop you for a second. We're at 9:45, and we are required, if we want to go beyond 10, to take a vote to do so. So I have to stop you for just a minute and ask if somebody wants to make a motion that we go beyond 10.
I move that we go beyond 10 and continue the meeting until we finish the agenda.
Second.
Can I object to that?
And I was in Atlanta this morning, so it's now 12, quarter of the 1 my time.
You've heard my objections to that general extension until we're done. I think it does a real disfavor to people who can't stay that
All right,
late.
will you please let us do the motion? Anybody want to vote no?
I'm voting no.
All right, Liv, will you please take a roll call?
Director Cordova?
No.
Director Gillette?
Yes.
President Welch?
Yes, and I want to point out that we are not taking care of the district's business if we don't go beyond 10.
I'm
The
happy
second time in a row.
to appoint another, I'm happy to attend another meeting. You can continue tomorrow
That's
evening.
right. Tomorrow
I will
night
be
with
here.
no notice.
Well, I'm not available.
Yeah, I'm at my nephew's graduation.
Director Toon,
Available next
go ahead,
week.
Lynn, I'm sorry.
Director Jones?
Yes, I want to extend the meeting.
Can-
President Chair Swat?
No.
Can I suggest just make it till just 10:30?
Well, the vote just said it's 10 o'clock, whether we like it or not.
Well, okay. You could have another motion.
I move then to extend the meeting to 10:30. Thank you for this suggestion.
Second the motion.
Policy and procedures, Lynn. I've tried it twice with you, and you've cited policy and procedures manual as a reason why we cannot do that.
I have no idea what you're talking about, as
Why don't we
usual.
take a recess and look at the policy and procedures, because you cannot move to continue the item to a time certain.
Okay, I move that we finish. I'm sorry.
Should Mabry finish her
I only have one more point to make.
How much time does she have, Lynn? All right,
Yeah,
go ahead and
okay.
finish your comment.
Okay, I hope, okay. And the board did not ask Mr. Hart why he allowed an officer who was on internal investigation to serve as a field training officer for the newest officer on the force. That is also considered totally inappropriate behavior, action, procedure for a chief of police. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going,
New solution. I move that we extend the meeting until we are able to discuss items B, E, and F.
Ms. Stricker, can we look at the procedures and policies, please?
I would be happy to. Could someone, I do not have a copy, I apologize. If someone has a copy,
right.
that would be great.
I'm going to call the question now. I want to move that we extend the chief's contract through February on its current terms as noticed in the agenda.
I second.
Any further discussion on the board? All right, Lynn, would you take a roll call, please?
Director Cordova?
No.
Director Gillette?
Yes.
President Welch?
Yes.
Director Jones?
One question, through February or to February?
Through,
Thank
to
you.
the end of February.
Yes.
And Vice President Chair Swat?
No.
Say what?
All right, the motion passes.
You had to say something there.
The next item on the agenda is, I would like actually to take up item B, the possibility of changing the order and manner in which it takes general public comment, which the board takes general public comment for items not on the agenda.
Hold on, just a second. We have to deal with this NBA assessment because that has a time limit that if we
Okay.
fail to meet, you won't be paying any taxes.
Good point, good point. Okay, let's take that one.
Some of you would like that, I see.
Well, actually, do we have a motion on that one?
We don't have a motion, we have to have a discussion on it. We're running, if
And
we
you need
stop
to-
at 10, we're supposed to stop and decide what issues we're going to cover between now and 10 o'clock. And since the vote has been taken to stop at 10, at a minimum, we have to pick the most time-sensitive issues.
I agree. I think we should take that one. So does
You would need
anybody
to-
have anything to say about it?
Well, I think the chief needs to lead us through this. Can we get him back in the room, please? No, we didn't. The vote is to stop at 10 o'clock. We have to
No,
have
we had a
4-to-1
3-2 vote on it, and we need a vote of 4-1 at least to go beyond 10. So we didn't get a vote to go beyond 10. No. Where's the chief?
It actually did, because, well...
Can you explain this to us, Chuck,
later.
since he's not here?
I'm sorry, what?
Can you explain this agenda item since he's not here? We're running out of time.
Yeah, the notion is we have to have these resolutions passed in the order listed here so we can authorize the park the park tax, and we have to have, well, here, let me just turn to the thing and read it to you. Thank you. 264, for those who have it. The concept is there are 3 resolutions we have to pass, and the first one deals with the approval of the initiating of proceedings for the levy and collection of the assessments for the Park District for the fiscal year 2016-27. The second step involves the approval of the annual report, which lists everybody's parcel tax number in here and the amount of their particular set of the assessments. And then the third step is declaring its intention to levy and collect assessments for the Kensington Park Assessment District for 2016-2017. Once we pass these, then we come back in June and have the final vote. But we have to pass these, or else the special tax for the parcel district for the park will not pass, and we don't have the legal authority to collect that tax.
So in other words, in order to have that legal authority, we need to take a vote tonight.
We need to pass resolutions tonight. Well, Mr. Hart, you're back in the room. Do you want to take us through item? I started it on item E at page 264. 8E.
Director, you're doing a great job. The only thing I would add is that I believe it's about 47 cents increase from last year to this year. Obviously, it pays for the park improvements. It pays for the trees, the trimming, and so forth, and maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an annual assessment that was been voted on a number of years ago, obviously.
It's pretty perfunctory, frankly, but we have to authorize it every year under Prop 218, and if we don't authorize it, we can't collect this particular levy tax.
That's correct. Yeah. It's $16 per parcel.
Oh, okay. So I guess we have to have a public discussion on it, unfortunately.
Well, I'm going to make the motion and ask for a second, and then we can, if somebody from the public wants to comment, they can. So I'm going to move that we approve the resolutions listed in item E, new business 8E in the agenda. What?
I think if you want to state your motion, you can state it, but I would suggest that you restate it after the public comment. I think you
Sure.
need to get public comment in.
Okay, so
before
that's the motion. Do
decision.
I have a second? All right, now, how much, Kevin? How much per parcel is the?
1609.
Yeah, 1608.
No, it's 1609 because that's on the document. Is that the?
I think it's 47 cents. Right, it's
Okay.
1609 per parcel.
Thanks
Okay,
for the.
quick question. That the fiscal year 2016-17 assessment roll says says $16.08 per parcel, and the resolution says 1609. I apologize, but those are different. So I don't want any.
And they actually explain that in the report, saying it's a rounding error. There is a footnote at the very end of this report that says that the difference between 1608 and 1609 is simply a rounding mistake. So we're good. We're fine, yeah. No, we aren't. No, it's. I had the same question, and
Okay, thank you.
I hunted for that footnote.
Finding the note. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the public? All right.
Go ahead, Chuck. Will you give the motion?
So we're going to restate the motion here. I move that we adopt resolutions 2016-5, 2016-6, and 2016-7, prepared by the MBS, that initiate the process of collecting the annual park assessment tax as listed in new business item 8E on the agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We had public comment. Any opposed?
Mabry said speed it up.
So, do we have a unanimous vote on this? Aye? Okay, motion passes.
The only other question is about the election.
Yes.
If we have to have that, that's.
That has 332.
Oh, yeah. Of course, you don't have to
That
have an
actually
election.
can be pushed if you want to. We have another month for that.
Let's try and get it done.
No reason to push it. I'm not coming to a second.
Any public comment on item F?
Not,
Five to.
there's another, there's
Any
another
public
resolution.
comment on item F? No, okay.
Well, I'm actually against having an election. I just kind of like this job for life. What? No? Thank you. Yeah, I just want to keep this job forever.
Go ahead, Vanessa, you have
It's
a comment?
sinecure,
Question?
isn't it? The benefits are great.
He gets to sit next to me. What could be better?
Yeah. I mean, the fire board's forever. Oh.
All right. Go ahead.
Tick, 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 tock.
Could you just review, General Manager Hart, that this is standard pro forma? We do this every time there's an election, and can you just
Yes.
walk us through that, please?
Yes, you have to call it has to call for an election. We have to notify the elector's office in Contra Costa County that you want to have that election. You recognize that you want to have the election. You recognize that there are 2 empty seats potentially that are up for election. You have to take formal action to validate the fact that any new potential candidate will have a certain amount of words per sample ballot, and that they'll pay for that cost. So you have to, that's all part of the resolution.
I move that the district adopt item 8F, or I'm sorry, this is 8F, Resolution 2016-8.
A second.
All in favor?
Well, do you want,
Any
anybody in
further
the
discussion?
public have any comments about this?
We did, but anybody want to say anything?
Anybody against democracy? Of
course. Well, actually.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Let's do item B. We still have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'm going to say right now, we got lucky tonight. There was very little public comment, but I believe that we should change our procedure. I would propose that we, and this is not for vote tonight, it's just to get it out there so we can consider it next time and there's notice. I would propose that we limit individuals' comments to 3 minutes apiece in the initial public comment portion on matters not on the agenda. We limit the initial comment before we get to the agendized items to 20 minutes overall. If other people want to comment, then we put the rest of the public comments, again, on items not agendized till the end of the meeting. And we can, since there's only 20 minutes to begin, I would say that we come up with a procedure that maybe people write put their comments in writing, and we randomly select them, and we take as many as we can get into that first 20-minute period. The rest, again, go to the end. I think that would, given the track record we've had so far, I think that would get us doing a lot more business. We should prioritize comments from the public in response to agendized items rather than anything somebody wants to bring up. Anything somebody wants to bring up should not come at the expense of public comments on agendized items that we need to get to. Yeah.
If you were here for last meeting, I think, Rich Carlson made a really great statement about this, and I would refer you to that. Unless
Yes, he did, and I want to thank him for that comment, too. The consent calendar is an agendized item, so when we get to the consent calendar, we take public comment on that. Yes. Anything on the agenda would be as normal. It's the stuff that right in the beginning. No.
Well, he's clarified it, so that's the way it is.
We haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, you're right. I
Carried over to
apologize.
next
So
meeting.
it shouldn't. It's an agendized item. I agree. So I don't know if everybody heard that. So the point Dr. Delk was making is that the way we've written it now on the agenda, we group comments on the consent calendar in with the public comments on non-agendized items, which really is not proper. If it's an agendized item, we'll take the comments. for the comments, just general comments people want to raise on any issue that are not on the agenda. That's what I'm talking about. Well, talk to your two board members who don't want to be on 10. I want to get to them, Leonard. I'm not allowed to under the law now.
Not adopted the minutes, however. We've not adopted them.
I move we close the meeting tonight, adjourn at 10 o'clock.
Directors, if you can come by here and make sure you sign the resolutions, I'd appreciate that.
I
And
second
then
that
also,
motion.
are we going to set a date for, we're going to set a date to hear the budget? A special meeting?
Could you explain to us the impact of not having the first hearing on the budget tonight?
Well, it's going to cause us to have a special meeting ultimately, and we're supposed to have it's supposed to be heard at a regular scheduled meeting. So it has a significant impact for planning purposes, obviously.
So, but don't we have to have the budget done by the end of June?
So the special meeting, it will be like last year. We'll have a special meeting after next June meeting.
We have a tentative budget adopted,
I vote
and then,
against adjourning, I want to be on the record. I'm voting against adjourning.
well, we didn't take the vote yet.
I know, that's what I'm wondering. I want to have my voice heard.
We had a motion, we had a second. All in favor?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
What's?
We have a motion and a second.
And what was the motion?
Vanessa made the motion, Rochelle seconded. So, all in favor?
I think you better do a roll call on this.
Roll call on this, Lynn?
This is to adjourn, is that right?
Yes.
Aye.
Director Gillette? Absolutely not.
Well, what happens if we... Point of order here. What happens if we don't vote to adjourn?
Take the vote, quick.
All right, no.
Director Toombs?
No.
Vice President Sharon Swan? Yes.
Now we're in an impasse.
Well, the public is, excuses. We can discuss nothing of business.
See you in court.
See you in
We're
court.
over. We're over. No, you get, be careful what you wish for. I want to say I'm very disappointed in both Directors Cordova and Chair Watts for doing this. I think that it's irresponsible to the members of this community, and as someone who's lived here for 38 years, I got to say, this is just bad behavior.
Director Walsh?
Thanks for...
The meeting's over.
Yeah, Marilyn.
Meeting's
Bad
over.
behavior.
Meeting's over.
Yep.